Hi, freelancing class. Dr. K here to talk about two of the important lessons that I hope you'll take away from this week's readings and activities. Namely, number one, the value of networking, which is the strength of your personal and professional connections. And number two, the importance of identifying your niches, which are your specialties that you offer as a freelancer. Let's start by talking about the reading that I asked you to do for July 6th from the Freelancer's Bible, the chapter by Sarah Horowitz. One of the big takeaways that I hope you got from this chapter was the diagram that's on page 15 of the chapter or page 16 in the PDF. And let me share that with you here. So these 5 stages that Horowitz talks about in terms of the work that freelancing entails. What she's hoping that you get from this is that doing freelance work is much more than actually doing the writing or the editing or the designing on a project. That's in her diagram, stage 2. But notice that there's all this preliminary work that you have to do just to get your business started. And then once you get the business started, step 2 is you actually get to work on projects for clients. But you also, step 3, have to be constantly growing your business, looking for new clients to replace old clients as their projects rotate off. Then you have to do all the paperwork that's involved with managing the business, which means you're a mini HR person, you're handling all your accounting, all the legal aspects of the business. And then finally is making sure that your business is connected to your community. So when you agree to take on work as a freelancer, again, it's more than just being a good writer. It's knowing that you can handle all 5 of these steps. And that leads immediately into the next point that Horowitz emphasizes, which is the importance of your connections, your network. So the first type of connections that she encourages you to foster are connections to other freelancers. So she mentions that she was a past president of the Freelancers Union. There's a whole website where you can look at resources that other freelancers have put together so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel in doing these 5 stages. You're not the first freelancer who's ever had to figure out how to get your business started. There are plenty of other people who have walked that road. So take advantage of their expertise, get plugged into the kinds of professional communities that can help you with these stages. But the second kind of networking that she emphasizes is the importance of you being connected to the people in your life. So your friends, your fellow classmates in this class and in others in our program, your professors, your past employers. All of these are people who could possibly refer jobs to you at some point in the future. And you may worry, well, I'm bothering those people. I shouldn't talk about, my private interests in setting up my business. But in fact, you never know where your next job is going to come from. And the more that you let people know what you're trying to do, the more they can help point clients that could be right in your direction. I thought I would illustrate this by giving you some examples from my own career. Let me share another document with you. Okay, so in this document, I have showed you where I got some of the referrals for places that I have worked as a freelancer during my 20 years in Arkansas. Now, keep in mind that when I came to Arkansas, originally, I had no connections here other than my friend who suggested that I come to work at UALR, that's Dr. Barb. And I was literally starting from scratch in terms of setting up my network. So not surprisingly, some of the very first jobs that I got, Axiom was my first freelance gig. The Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality was my second gig. Those came from students in my class who they met me in class. They realized that their organization had a training need, and they suggested that I go work for that organization. Same thing happened at the Central Arkansas Library System. And again, it was a student from the undergraduate music program who came to our writing master's program who connected me with the UA Little Rock Choir program. where I did social media and web writing that turned into what is now my position with Wildwood Park for the Arts, where I'm their publicity coordinator and a member of their board of directors. So notice that 4 of my things came from student referrals, and then the next 3 came from colleague referrals. So working with the Arkansas Public Administration Consortium, the U of A Cooperative Extension Service, and the Arkansas Department of Finance and Administration, in all of those cases, a colleague either was asked first if they would do the job and they didn't have time for it, so they referred it to me, or somebody asked them about the job and they said, oh, I know the person who's got the expertise for this. And again, they pointed them to me. But if I had not connected with my colleagues and let them know the kinds of things that I was interested in doing, they wouldn't have known to refer them to me. And then finally notice that some of the places found me by looking me up on the UA Little Rock website. So they knew they wanted somebody in technical writing. They knew that UA Little Rock was likely to have somebody in that area. And so these 4 organizations, the National Center for Toxicological and Environmental Health, which is a branch of the FDA, and they're based down by Pine Bluff, the Center for Toxicology and Environmental Health, which is based in Maumelle, and then the Arkansas Department of Health and the Arkansas Department of Human Services, all of them looked on the website first and then contacted me directly. But notice that's 4 jobs compared to 7 jobs that came from referrals. So for me, having students and colleagues send me references was indispensable to getting my freelancing career off the starting blocks. So one of the things that you'll notice is that by working at these different places, I developed new areas of specialty. So when I first got hired at UA Little Rock, never in a million years would I have thought that I would say, I'm a specialist in toxicology, writing, and editing. But after that first job at ADEQ, which was followed shortly by the work at NCTR and CTH, all of which are toxicology and environmental organizations of different stripes, I ended up developing a specialty in that area and a bunch of samples that showed that I was able to do writing and training in this particular area. And so this worked out well for me because then I had a specialty that made me stand out from even other technical writers. So there are plenty of technical writers in the state, but not everybody does toxicology work. It's very heavy lifting in terms of the reading and writing requirements. And number 2, it gave me an area that pays really well, because first of all, you'll notice that at least 2 of those are government organizations. Government organizations can afford to pay well. And then when you get into a specialty that not many other people can do, that also increases the amount of pay that you can ask for. So this leads me into why we're doing this particular week's activities, which is encouraging you to begin exploring what your specialties might be so that you can communicate them to your network. Let me share with you the handout that I've given you in the July 7th folder that I'm going to ask you to be working on all week. And let's talk a little bit about how to fill that out. Okay, so here's the top of that worksheet. And notice there's a place for you to type your name in here. Be sure that you put your name on it so that when you share it with me, I'll know whose sheet this is. And in the first thing, I'm going to ask you to think about names of skills or tasks that you would be able to offer as a service. Notice that I'm going to discourage you from just putting writing in these blanks because writing is too vague. We all do writing. What kinds of writing do you want to offer as services? So I've listed a few things that I could say here. So social media writing, document design, software documentation, plain language writing and editing, and instructional writing are just a few of the tasks that I could do for an organization. In the second column, I'm going to ask you to fill out how good are you at this skill or task. And it doesn't matter, rate yourself honestly here. This is all going to be informative that helps us figure out what is the best plan for you to develop your freelancing business. So for example, I'm good at social media writing. I'm going to list that as a 9. And in fact, I actually feel pretty confident about my abilities in all of these areas. So I'm going to rate myself fairly highly here because I have a PhD and I'm entitled to. All right, in the next column, I'm going to ask you to rate your enjoyment of this skill or task, which is for you to look at yourself and evaluate honestly of these things, which ones do you enjoy the most? Now, the great thing is I love all of them. So that's great. So that's wonderful. I can honestly say, I would love to write your social media. I would love to write your social media. I would love to design documents. I think software documentation is so incredibly cool. I adore plain language writing and editing. And I think instructional writing is as cool as software documentation. And then the next thing is do I have examples I can show of this skill or task? And I can honestly say yes to all of those, and I'm not going to spend that time filling that out. What I want you to get from this is to take a look at what it means in terms of what you need to develop. So for example, let's say that you wanted to do proofreading, and we'll add proofreading in here as a category. But let's say that at this point in your career, you're not super confident about your ability to do that. So maybe you only rate it a 5, for example, but you really enjoy doing it. So you say that that's an 8, but you don't actually have any samples that you can use. Okay. What this means, if you were to fill out the worksheet this way, is that you cannot go out tomorrow and market yourself as a proofreader. Number one, because you need to get your confidence in how good you are at the task much higher. So if you don't have much confidence, that doesn't mean you can't do it later, but it does mean that you're going to need to go out and get some classes that are going to build your expertise in that area so that you can confidently say that you're at a 9 or a 10, because there are plenty of people out there who can. You can't compete with them at a 5. The other thing that this shows you is that you really want to do it, so it's going to be worth the time that you invest in it. And third, that you need to develop some samples. Because again, anybody can say, I am a great writer, I am a team player, I can edit any document, but if you don't have anything to show, there's no reason for anybody to believe that. So you need to make sure that you're either doing the kinds of class projects or getting internships, doing the kinds of things that'll build up your samples. And that's, again, something that your network can help you with. Your professors, your fellow classmates, people in your community can help connect you to those opportunities. All right, now I'm going to scroll down the worksheet here. And notice that I'm going to ask you then to make a similar list of areas of content expertise. These are not tasks that you perform. This is stuff that you know that you can write well about. And it doesn't have to be just stuff that comes from an academic context. It can be stuff that comes from your hobbies, your personal life, whatever. So I've begun to make a list of some of my areas of content expertise, which of course I start with writing styles and techniques because that's what I do. But notice that from my performing arts background, I also list things like stage musicals and choral masterworks. I list toxicology because I picked that specialty up. I have things like astronomy and Roman history and science fiction. All of these are topics that I feel super comfortable about. So if somebody asked me to write in this particular area, I could do so knowledgeably with a minimum of research. Okay, so in the second column here, I ask you to say, again, how much do you know about this topic? All right, I know a ton about writing styles and techniques, so I'm going to rate that a 10. If I were to come down to toxicology, I would obviously have to rate that lower. I'm not a toxicologist. I can read and understand toxicological writing, but I'm not capable of doing that kind of research on my own. I might rate that a 6, for example. And then talk about how much you enjoy writing about this topic. So this is how much motivation do you have to do work in this area? Well, for example, for performing arts stuff, I love that to death. Stage musicals, 10. Choral masterworks, 10. Toxicology, oh my gosh, it's a lot of work. I'm going to maybe go down to a 6 on that. And then again, here I ask you to assess whether or not you have any samples on these topics, okay? So we're going to use these to create a plan for you. Number one, we'll know what kinds of skills, if any, you have that you could take out the door tomorrow and begin freelancing in. And we'll also have a sense of things that you really love, but that either you need to develop more expertise in, and you need to develop more samples to be able to prove that you do these things. This will all become the basis of the two final projects that you're going to create for this class, the website and the marketing plan. And then once you know these things, you'll be able to communicate them to the people in your network so that they can point you to the right kinds of projects. So let me conclude by emphasizing that when you're doing networking, you're playing a long game. It's not necessarily going to result in a job tomorrow or a job next week, but by constantly talking to people about, first of all, knowing your areas of expertise that you want to offer, and then communicating those to the people in your network, you're playing a game that will lead to jobs over and over again for years down the road. So I started with just a couple of jobs my first year in Arkansas, and that led to me ultimately working for more than 10 different organizations around the state, and being able to win a public service award because of all the different organizations that I was able to work with. So this can work for you too. Like Jan, you mentioned in your Facebook post yesterday that you were looking for other ways to make connections to job opportunities other than using job boards like Upwork and Guru. This is the way to do it. It requires constant attention, which is why, as you saw in Horowitz's graph, she puts managing and growing your business as something that you're constantly doing in your work as a freelancer. But if you give it that attention and you make sure that you're making those connections and you're adding new specialties, then you will grow your business, and you will be able to succeed as a freelancer. Okay, with that, let me just say that I've enjoyed the discussion that's taken place on the Facebook group already, even though it's just after the first day. Please keep up the good work. And if you have additional questions, please send them to me at my email address, or put them on Facebook, because chances are if you have that question, somebody else has that question. And so you're benefiting the whole class by putting it out there. All right, looking forward to continuing our conversations. Stay tuned. See you online soon.